They set my photo on the altar and lit the candles. The choir sang my favorite hymn, the one I used to hum when I ironed school uniforms and burned the edges of sleeves. My daughter, in a black dress that wasn't hers 6 months ago, gripped the side of the pulpit and told a room of strangers how I loved dawn and cinnamon toast and garden soil under my nails. The urn on the pedestal looked heavy. 2 men lifted it like it contained a soul. But I knew it was filled with sand, because I was standing in the last pew, alive, watching my own memorial service. I'd always imagined death as quiet. This was theater. The flowers were too white, the crying too loud, the slideshow too perfect. They used a picture from the vineyard harvest when the light hit me just right, softening the lines on my face. I wanted to raise my hand and say, "That's a filter." But the pastor was already talking about my journey. My daughter called me a guiding star. A month earlier, she had filed the paperwork that declared me legally dead. You can't be a star and a corpse in the same breath. But grief sells a story no one bothers to audit. My name is Nora Caldwell. I am 68 years old. 2 months ago, I left our town for a wellness retreat in the Cascades after a cardiologist warned me to slow down or stop. I shut off my phone because the doctor told me to rest my head, not just my heart. I told no one, not even my daughter, because she would call every 10 minutes, and I'd spend my days reassuring a person who didn't believe any reassurance that didn't end with money. When I came back 9 days later, I found my front door keyed a different code, my mail forwarded, my bank accounts locked for the estate of the late Eleanor Nora Caldwell, and a cardboard sign on my rose arbor that read, "Estate sale, 1 day only." I wasn't late. I was early, to my own end. No one believes you at first when you tell them you are alive. It is not the kind of thing that fits easily into forms. I walked into the county office with a beating heart and a driver's license, and the clerk looked at her screen and frowned like my pulse was an inconvenience. She said, "I'm sorry for your loss." "Ma'am," I said, "I am my loss." She offered me a pamphlet about grief counseling. I offered to take her to lunch. We stared at each other like two people trapped in the wrong dream.
I did what you do when your life has been erased. I called the person who once promised me the truth matters more than comfort. She had said it to me 10 years ago in a freshman seminar when I wrote those words on the board and told a room of sleepy 18-year-olds to argue with me. Her hand shot up. Truth is a kind of comfort if you build a life on it. Her name was Maya Ruiz. She runs a small investigative podcast from a rented studio above a florist. She listens for a living. Her phone picked up on the second ring. "Professor Caldwell?" she said, voice small with surprise and then bursting with worry. "Are you okay?" "I think I died," I said. Then I sat in my car and laughed in the jagged way people laugh. They can't stop crying. The memorial service ended. People lined up to hug my daughter. She cried into every shoulder like she had practiced. I watched the urn. The sand did not move. The ushers carried out the flowers. The pastor shook hands like he was paid by the grip. The exit sign glowed its steady green. I could walk out, leave them to their pageant, return to my car and disappear to the mountains and spend the rest of my days tending vines and forgiving fog. But I had spent my life teaching difficult books to teenagers who thought the ending is the place you stop turning pages because you are tired. The ending, I told them, is the place you earn. I stepped into the aisle. The floorboards creaked the way old truths do. My shoes sounded like a gavel. Avery looked up. Her face made a journey from pale to paper to a color I couldn't name. The room said my name the way a flock changes direction. "Mom?" she whispered. You can whisper and still be heard when every ear in the building belongs to disbelief. Your... She didn't finish because she had used the word already in places that mattered. She had used it in a form with a signature and a notary stamp and a date. She had printed it under penalty of perjury. She had said it in bank offices and to an insurance adjuster and in emails to cousins we hadn't seen in 10 years. A lie on a stage is performance. A lie on paper is architecture. "Don't stop the service on my account," I said. "I've always wanted to hear what people say when I'm not there to correct them." I thought you went off the road," she said, hands trembling in a way I couldn't tell if it was acting or shock. "There was blood. Your car was..." She looked past me like the story might appear to rescue her. Someone's child sobbed. Someone's uncle swore. Someone's neighbor pulled out a phone and did what neighbors do now, record the moment the miracle looks like a scandal. I walked up the aisle and touched the urn. The lid was glued shut. I could tell by the residue at the seam, the faint scent of epoxy. Grief shouldn't smell like a hardware store. I said, "You could have used flour. It's cheaper." "Nora," the pastor said, as if my first name could put me back in the urn. "Perhaps we should..." He gestured toward his office like we could move the truth into a smaller room so it would behave. "No," I said. "Leave everything exactly where it is." I looked at my daughter and then at the pews full of people who had brought casserole and curiosity. There will be a reception. There will also be questions. I left before anyone could show me where to stand from my own receiving line. I'm old enough to know you never win anything in a room where the other side arranged the chairs. I met Maya on the steps. She hugged me with her whole spine. "Okay," she said, "tell me everything from the beginning." "The beginning is a heart that knocked like a door in the night," I said. "But you want the paper trail, don't you?" She nodded. "The story and the proof," she said. "The proof is the story we can keep." I told her about the retreat, the doctor, the silence, the waterfall that sounded like forgiveness, the return to a house staged for strangers, the neighbor who tried to hand me $3 from my own mixing bowls because her grandson likes to make slime, the bank, the county clerk, the pamphlet for widows, the voicemail on my phone from my daughter that said, "I love you, Mom," in a tone people use when they have chosen the kind of love that can be turned off if necessary. "I'll need the paperwork," Maya said. "I can reverse engineer the lie if I can read the path she built." "She filed a death certificate," I said. "How do you file a death certificate for a living person?" "You find a doctor who never met you in a clinic that sometimes forgets its oath when the bills pile up," she said softly. "You use a body that looks enough like yours that no one who loved you will ask to see it. You talk to an insurance adjuster who believes data more than the sound a heart makes." "How do you know this?" I asked. "Because this happens, Nora," she said. "Because when you have an audience, people tell you secrets. Because if you wanted a crime that looks like grief and not greed, you would design this one." "Are you sure you want to help?" I said. "This will get ugly." "It was ugly when they put your face on a slide and stole your name," she said. "Now it gets honest." We drove to my house. It looked like a stranger's idea of my life. Avery had painted the door a tasteful gray and stripped the porch of everything that made it belong to us. The chimes, the rubber boots lined up like parentheses, the little ceramic turtle my husband brought home from a roadside stand on our 20th anniversary. The realtor sign leaned against the rhododendron. A single balloon bobbed in the wind, the last air of a party no one attended for love. The key code I chose 15 years ago was the year my son would have started kindergarten if he had not died before his heart learned how to race without help. I never changed it. Grief made the numbers holy. The new code came from a keypad I did not pick. Mail looked at the door frame, scanning for tiny screws that shouldn't be there. No cameras, she murmured. Either she's careless or confident. Both, I said. That combination is how she's lived since she was 15. I taught critical thinking for 30 years to children who thought I wanted essays. What I wanted was simple. Say only what you can defend. We broke the lock with a pry bar scavenged from the shed because I would rather be accused of trespassing in my own living room than wait on a porch for permission to be a person. The house smelled like lemon cleaner and a lie. The family photos were gone from the mantel, the frames replaced with staged pictures of generic joy. Blonde children with missing teeth, a golden retriever I had never met. My books were boxed. The box labels were written in Avery's careful print. Donate, trash, sell. I stood in my kitchen where I had turned apples into pie and children into adults and gripped the counter until my knuckles brightened. You can take a lot from a woman, I said, but do not touch the recipes. Maya moved like a crime scene tech in a cop show, with less makeup and more focus. She photographed the boxes and the labels. She opened my desk drawers and clicked her tongue when she found them empty. She's thorough, she said, but no one seals every hole. The hole was at the bottom of a drawer in the old oak buffet I rescued from a church rummage sale before Avery was born. I slid the false panel I had installed with a carpenter friend when I still thought secrets were romantic, not survival. Inside lay the art of my life. My birth certificate, my marriage license, the deed to the vineyard, the letter my husband wrote me the night before his heart went out like a light in the wind, and the little notebook where I wrote down everything the world tried to erase. Maya photographed each page like the camera could memorize love. This will help, she said. The rest we'll have to go get. We found the rest in places grief doesn't usually go. A notary who filed a form by mail without a signature that matched any other signature of mine. A county clerk in a different county who said my death was one of 3 filed the same week by the same doctor. An insurance policy I did not buy with a beneficiary I did not choose, and a bank officer who said with a weary voice of a person who meant to do better that sometimes paperwork just looks like truth. Names, Maya said, writing fast. Dates, account numbers. We will build a map and walk it back to the beginning. The beginning was not my heart or the retreat. It was a man named Jason Porter who wore suits like apology and smiles like favors. He was Avery's fiance. He ran a startup that helped small clinics process insurance claims faster, which is to say he built a system that made it easier to move money in the dark. He spoke in language borrowed from the future to hide an ethic borrowed from a thief. He told my daughter he would create a safety net for both of them. Safety nets are only necessary when you plan to jump. I met him once before the service at a restaurant where the small plates were large in price and the waiter called me honored guest like he meant it. Jason shook my hand and held it 2 seconds longer than comfortable. Avery tells me you're very smart. I find that intimidating.
Honest men do not fear bright rooms, I said. He laughed. I like you, he said. You remind me of every professor who made me sit up straight. Then sit up straight, Mr. Porter, I said. People betray themselves when they slouch. He paid the bill with a card that did not have his name on it. I did not tell Maya this story. She found her own. She followed Jason from his office to a clinic on the edge of town where the paint peeled like old truth. She watched him shake hands with a doctor who wore a watch more expensive than the building. She listened by accident when the back door was propped open by a brick and the air vent carried voices like paper airplanes. Words like expedite and verify and no next of kin floated out and landed in her notebook. When Jason left, she photographed his license plate and texted me a picture of his smile taken from the side. Side views catch truths people hide from the front. "We can do this one of two ways," Maya said, that night at her studio, where the florist downstairs made the whole place smell like apologies and anniversaries. "Quietly, we take the documents to the DA and we wait while the wheels turn. Or loudly, we take it to the microphone and the light and the room where liars melt." "You know me well enough to know which way I choose," I said.
"Loud," she said. "I thought so. I have told students my whole life that silence is not the same as grace. You can forgive someone without making yourself a rug. What I wanted was not a trial or a headline. I wanted a mirror. I wanted my daughter to see herself not as the woman in black who cried prettily, but as the person on the other side of a door she locked with paperwork and called safety. I wanted her to say out loud the things she said to a notary in writing. I wanted her to tell the truth and then live long enough to pay it. We set the date for the truth, like you set the date for a surgery you cannot live without. We use the room no one can ignore, my living room, staged by a realtor, reclaimed by its owner. We invited the people who mattered not because they could solve anything, but because they should know. The pastor, the banker, the clerk who gave me the pamphlet, 3 women from my book club who asked better questions than most lawyers, the neighbor who tried to pay for my mixing bowls, and the man from the local paper who still believes ink can save a town. We told Avery there would be a, quote, family meeting. She texted back a thumbs up emoji and then the words, "Of course," like this was a calendar reminder and not a reckoning. Jason texted, "Looking forward to a mature conversation," which is something men say when they are about to talk to you like your life is a spreadsheet. "Loud," she said. "I thought so. I have told students my whole life that silence is not the same as grace. You can forgive someone without making yourself a rug. What I wanted was not a trial or a headline. I wanted a mirror. I wanted my daughter to see herself not as the woman in black who cried prettily, but as the person on the other side of a door she locked with paperwork and called safety. I wanted her to say out loud the things she said to a notary in writing. I wanted her to tell the truth and then live long enough to pay it. We set the date for the truth, like you set the date for a surgery you cannot live without. We use the room no one can ignore, my living room, staged by a realtor, reclaimed by its owner. We invited the people who mattered not because they could solve anything, but because they should know. The pastor, the banker, the clerk who gave me the pamphlet, 3 women from my book club who asked better questions than most lawyers, the neighbor who tried to pay for my mixing bowls, and the man from the local paper who still believes ink can save a town. We told Avery there would be a, quote, family meeting. She texted back a thumbs up emoji and then the words, "Of course," like this was a calendar reminder and not a reckoning. Jason texted, "Looking forward to a mature conversation," which is something men say when they are about to talk to you like your life is a spreadsheet. I did not sleep the night before. I ironed a shirt I love until the fabric glowed with the kind of attention we reserve for babies and bodies in caskets. I made coffee at 3 a.m. and watched the steam rise and turn to water again. I walked the rows of my vineyard with a flashlight, touching leaves like rosary beads. The vines are older than my daughter and less complicated. They always do exactly what they were made to do, reach for light and hold on. I told them my plan and asked them for courage.
They did not answer, but the air felt like a hand on my back. People arrived holding plates of cookies the way small towns do when large things break. They set them down and sat on edge like a jury that did not ask to be summoned. The pastor folded his hands, the banker adjusted his tie, the clerk wore her apology like a scarf. My book club friends took notes because old habits protect hearts. The reporter tested his recorder and stared at me with a face that said he would attend this story to its last period. Avery entered with Jason at her side. She looked ordinary and therefore dangerous. Grief had become a costume. "Mom," she said, aiming for bright and landing on brittle. "We gave you all a scare, but we were so happy, so unbelievably happy when you walked in yesterday. Weren't we, babe?" She nudged Jason with an elbow. He smiled on cue. We were devastated and then ecstatic. We feel complicated.
Complication is a word people use when they want to skip precision, I said. Today, we are going to be precise. "Is this a gotcha?" Jason asked, looking around the room like someone should object on his behalf, because that's not healthy. "This is a mirror," Maya said, stepping from the doorway with her microphone in her palm. She had set up 2 small cameras in plain sight. Nothing stolen needs to hide. "We're going to walk through the last 2 weeks by the numbers and the names and the dates. If at any point I misstate a fact, you'll have a chance to correct me. The recording will be given to the district attorney if facts look like crimes. Everyone understand?" She looked at each face. The pastor nodded cautiously. The banker frowned at a point in the air. The clerk whispered yes, so quietly she might have been praying. Avery pressed her lips together, a habit from childhood when she knew the answer but didn't want to say it. "Let's keep this civil," Jason said. "We're all adults. Adults read what they sign," I said. Maya began with the death certificate. She projected it on the TV the realtor had used to show features of the house no one needed. The room looked at Maya's name in black letters. She pointed to the signature. "Dr. Daniel K. Bishop, Cascade Health Clinic. Date of death, May 14th. Cause, vehicle accident with subsequent hypothermia. Body condition, unrecoverable at scene."
"Did you see the body?" she asked Avery, voice level and clinical. Avery looked at the signature like it might turn back into a pin. "It was awful," she said. "The police told me—" "Did you see the body?" Maya repeated. "No," Avery whispered. "They said it wasn't necessary for my own good." "Did you request a coroner's report?" Maya asked. "I trusted the process," Avery said. Maya clicked. The coroner's report appeared. It had a stamp that said pending, and then a second stamp that said waived. "Who waived the autopsy?" Maya asked. Jason cleared his throat. "It's standard when the injuries are consistent," he said. "We didn't want to put her through..." "Through what?" I asked. "Through proof?" Maya clicked again. An email popped up. It was from Jason's work account to Dr. Bishop with the subject line, "Expedite Community Need." It contained a sentence that could fit into a pocket. "Family requests discretion. Documentation sufficient for insurance and estate." She zoomed on the words "request discretion." She didn't need to say it. The room knew. When people tell the truth, they use the fewest words. "Let's look at the insurance," Maya said, moving forward. "Policy issued 3 months ago through Midway Mutual Life, brokered by Porter and Gray." She looked at Jason. "That's your company." "We broker policies for many families," he said. "We help people plan." "Who is the beneficiary?" Maya asked. Jason looked at Avery, then back to the screen. "Avery is," he said, "as she should be." "And the estate?" Maya asked. "Who filed the estate closure with First Palouse Bank?" Avery's hand shook. "I did." she said. Mom, I didn't know what else to do. They told me to act. There were bills. You filed the estate 9 days after you told the town I died. You listed assets you didn't earn and debts you didn't have. You shut off the card I used to buy flour for the church bake sale. I was following the list. It's what they said to do when someone dies. Which they? Maya asked. Avery looked at Jason again. He stared at the wall like it might offer a new question. My fiancé, she said. I did not want to ask the next question because I already knew the answer. I asked it anyway to give the room the dignity of hearing the truth spoken. Why? I said. Why didn't you wait? Why didn't you call? Why did you choose paperwork over a person?
Avery's eyes filled the way eyes do when they had been practicing for an audience. She looked at the pastor and then at the banker and then at the clerk, as if any of them could offer a letter she could hold up to block the thing behind it. Because I needed money, she said finally. Her voice broke on the last word like a ladder missing a rung. Because we were behind. Jason's company had a bad quarter and the house needed work. And I thought, she stopped. The word died on the floor. I waited. She found it. I thought it would happen soon anyway. The room exhaled the way people do when they've had the breath holding for years. My book club friend wrote the words, would happen soon anyway, and underlined them twice. The banker took off his glasses and polished them with his tie for 30 seconds without looking at the lenses. The clerk put her hand to her mouth and whispered, "Oh God," in a voice that had seen forms and forgot people. The pastor bowed his head. Jason smiled, small and tight the way men do when they think they have been brave. He looked at me like he wanted a medal for getting through a tough question. "Thank you," Maya said to Avery, as if Avery had offered a glass of water and not a confession. "Now we can talk about solutions." "Solutions?" Jason scoffed. "You think there's a solution to embarrassment? We'll be the talk of the town for months. This will ruin any chance we had." "This will save you from prison," Maya said calmly, "if you let it." Jason laughed again, louder and less pretty. "We did nothing illegal," he said. "We filed what was necessary. We acted on information given to us by professionals. If there were errors, they were bureaucratic. And if she walked into her own service, that's on her. She disappeared. We panicked. We planned poorly." He looked at the reporter and the cameras and did something I will never forget. He straightened his jacket and checked his hair in the reflection on the TV like a man preparing for the history he thought he could edit. "This will make a great redemption arc. America loves those." We called the bank. The banker in the room dialed his boss and put him on speaker, his tie suddenly too tight for anything but truth. "We closed an estate that is not an estate," he said. "We released funds without due diligence. We will make the account holder whole today, not tomorrow, today." He looked at me with eyes that had moved from shame to resolve. "Mrs. Caldwell, we are going to fix this." We called the county clerk office. The clerk in the room spoke to her supervisor and said the words expedite and hearing and reversal like they were the names of saints. "We'll present you in front of a judge by 4, the supervisor said, and then added a sentence I have never heard from a mouth that had ever held a stamp. "I am sorry." Jason raised his hands like a man surrendering to a polite swarm of bees. "Everyone calm down," he said. "We can manage this privately." Maya shook her head. "No," she said, "we can't." Avery reached for me. I did not move back. I let her fingers touch the air where my sleeve used to be. "Mom," she whispered, "I messed up. I know. She groped for a word we do not let children say often enough. "I'm wrong," I said softly. "You are, but wrong is a direction you can turn around from if you start walking." "What do you want me to do?" "Anything.
I'll do anything." "Not anything," I said. "Something specific." I handed her a pen. I slid a sheet of paper on the coffee table like a low altar. "You are going to write a statement. You will tell the truth about what you did, who helped you, who pressured you, and who paid you. You will sign your name in a way that looks like your name. Then you will read it out loud to the room. Then you will take me to the courthouse."
"You're right," I said. "America does love redemption." I moved to the mantel and placed the letter from my husband upon it like a small and tender law. But the arc doesn't begin with applause. It begins with the floor. The DA did not need the recording that came next, but he would get it. I played the voicemail I had found when I drove back from the retreat and picked up the phone I left in a drawer like a teenager. Avery's voice was soft and slurred from wine and midnight. "Mom, I wish you'd pick up," she said. "This is so stupid. I know you're not dead. I know you're at that cabin doing your breathing thing. But Jason says we have to start. He says money doesn't grow on trees and plans don't wait for people who want to meditate. He says..." A door shut in the background. A man's voice said her name sharply. The message cut. No one spoke for a full minute. Even the florist downstairs went quiet, like flowers can learn silence. Jason's face went still in the way faces do when they have been told the game ended last week and the score was recorded in ink. Avery covered her mouth with both hands. The pastor crossed himself even though we are not Catholic. The banker whispered something about internal reviews. The clerk cried in a way that sounded like a promise. Then we began again with a new verb. Not accuse, not punish. The new verb was restore. Restoration is not the same as forgiveness. Forgiveness is a gift the wounded person decides to give from a place no one else can see. Restoration is public. It has receipts. It says, here is what was taken, and here is what it cost to mend. We called the insurance company on speaker. Maya read them the policy number. The adjuster answered in a tone so bright it could blind. "We're so sorry for your loss," she began. Maya interrupted. "She's not lost," she said. "She's alive, and you are on a recording. The beneficiary filed a fraudulent claim. We have the death certificate, the waived autopsy, the email from the broker, the voicemail detailing premeditation, and witnesses present. We need a fraud investigator here by tomorrow morning." Silence on the line, then a new voice. "We'll be there today," the person said. "In 2 hours." We called the bank. The banker in the room dialed his boss and put him on speaker, his tie suddenly too tight for anything but truth. "We closed an estate that is not an estate," he said. "We released funds without due diligence. We will make the account holder whole today, not tomorrow, today." He looked at me with eyes that had moved from shame to resolve. "Mrs. Caldwell, we are going to fix this." We called the county clerk office. The clerk in the room spoke to her supervisor and said the words expedite and hearing and reversal like they were the names of saints. "We'll present you in front of a judge by 4, the supervisor said, and then added a sentence I have never heard from a mouth that had ever held a stamp. "I am sorry." Jason raised his hands like a man surrendering to a polite swarm of bees. "Everyone calm down," he said. "We can manage this privately." Maya shook her head. "No," she said, "we can't." Avery reached for me. I did not move back. I let her fingers touch the air where my sleeve used to be. "Mom," she whispered, "I messed up. I know. She groped for a word we do not let children say often enough. "I'm wrong," I said softly. "You are, but wrong is a direction you can turn around from if you start walking." "What do you want me to do?"
Anything. I'll do anything. Not anything, I said. Something specific. I handed her a pen. I slid a sheet of paper on the coffee table like a low altar. You are going to write a statement. You will tell the truth about what you did, who helped you, who pressured you, and who paid you. You will sign your name in a way that looks like your name. Then you will read it out loud to the room. Then you will take me to the courthouse.
And after? She asked, voice ragged as rope. After, I said, you will come to work for me. For you, her laugh hit the ceiling like a stray balloon. At the vineyard? At a place I am building, I said. A place that didn't exist yesterday, but began the day I stood in the back pew and watched you bury a living woman. I've spent a lifetime turning books into bridges. It's time to turn pain into a house. I am starting the truth orchard. The what? Jason said, scoffing. He had not learned yet that mockery is a poor shield when the arrows are made of plan. A home and a program for people who have been erased by paperwork, I said. For elders declared dead by their own kin. For men and women who lost their identities because it made someone else's life easier. A legal clinic, a counseling center, a dormitory with kitchen tables and gardens where people can set down their names and pick them up again. They will come. We will help them put their lives back together, piece by documented piece. That's not a business, Jason sneered. That's a fairy tale. It's a foundation, and it's already real because the truth is already here to fund it. Jason stood. We're leaving, he said to Avery. We are not going to be part of this circus. We have lawyers. Sit down, Avery whispered to him. Please. He did not. He walked to the door and found his path blocked by the reporter, who gently but firmly held up a hand. Just a second, the reporter said. One for the record. He lifted his phone and snapped a photo, the smirk of a man on the wrong side of his own story. Jason pushed past him and left in the way cowards leave, with the back of the head saying everything the face can't. Avery spent the next 40 minutes writing the statement. She stopped twice to cry in the clean way that looked like a beginning. She wrote the names. She wrote the sequence of dates. She wrote the sentence that hurts and heals. I knew better. She signed it. She read it. The room took breaths like that act alone oxygenated the county. We went to court. The judge looked like a man who wanted a sandwich and got a revolution instead. She listened. She asked for the recording. She asked the clerk the questions that were supposed to be asked the first time. She hit the desk with her gavel like a woman who understands wood can hold history. Mrs. Caldwell, welcome back. It was a better memorial service than the one with hymns. The next 3 weeks were work of a kind I had done my whole life with different tools. I used to read term papers with a red pen and ask for evidence. Now I sat at a table with a laptop and asked the same thing from people whose stories sounded like mine, without the comfort of a podcast or a room full of cookies. A woman from Spokane whose grandson filed for her Social Security after telling her church she had passed. A man in Yakima whose sons moved him to a facility he didn't choose and sold his truck 2 days later. A retired nurse from Wenatchee whose own sister emptied her accounts while she was sedated after a surgery. They came with poor copies and broken hearts. We made better copies and offered coffee and a promise I do not give lightly. You are not crazy. You are not alone.
Avery came to work every morning beneath a sky that made the world look as if it might be kind. She cleaned bathrooms the first week because humility begins with the floor. She sat with intake clients the second week and filled in forms with a patience I didn't know she had. She took notes in a large spiral notebook like a student who finally understands the class could save her life. She ate her lunch outside with the volunteers and told them things grown women rarely say out loud. I was raised by a mother who let me make mistakes without letting me keep them. She is making me keep this one, but she is also building me a shovel. The volunteers loved her like a project that could succeed. Jason tried to survive the way men like him do, by inventing a new room. He announced an app that would, quote, modernize end-of-life paperwork. He gave interviews with phrases like unfortunate situation and miscommunication. He wore a suit to the grocery store. He sued the county, the bank, the insurance company, and me. He stood on a courthouse step and called me vindictive. He did not know that a woman whose life has been stolen and returned is not vindictive. She is awake. The DA called and asked for the recording and the statement and the names behind the clinic. He moved the case forward like a man who had been waiting his whole career to prosecute something that looked like sin in a book. The Bar Association opened an inquiry into Dr. Bishop. Jason's partner at Porter & Gray changed the lock on the office and released a statement that said, "We stand for integrity," which is what people say when they want to survive the next quarter. The pastor stopped by the orchard with a stack of casseroles and asked me if I believed in grace for men who do not ask for it. I said, "I believe in consequences." And he nodded like he had just remembered Jesus flip tables before he fed anyone. Maya released the episode. She called it "The Funeral Where the Guest of Honor Stood and Spoke." It trended for a week. Calls came in from 3 states. Women emailed pictures of urns filled with strange sand. Men showed us letters from sons who had taken care of things in ways that included the part where they took. The orchard's phone kept ringing until our volunteer coordinator's voice went soft from kindness. Donations arrived, small bills and envelopes with shaky handwriting, checks from quiet men who never learned how to say "I'm sorry," an anonymous wire from a woman in Dallas with a note, "For my mother, who everyone forgot." Money is not meaning, but it is bricks. We laid them. 3 months after the service, the insurance investigator returned with a stack of files and an apology. "We're changing our protocols," she said, radically. She looked around the orchard at the long table where a woman from Pasco was teaching another woman how to reset her email password. "I didn't know," she whispered. "I worked in a building with no windows. I didn't see the faces." I touched her arm. We all worked in buildings like that. Some of them were our own minds. 6 months after the service, we held our first harvest at the vineyard since I got my name back. Volunteers came, clients came. The DA came with his tie loosened and carried crates like a teenager. My book club arrived with too much butter and not enough plates. The reporter took photos of the vines and made them look like sentences in a language anyone could learn. We pressed the grapes and watched the juice run like proof turned sweet. Avery stood beside me under a sky that turned September into honey. She wiped sweat from her forehead and laughed in a way I had not heard since she was 9, and we made forts with quilts and faith. "Mom," she said. She has been saying that word carefully lately, the way a person might hold a full glass. "I brought something." She reached into her bag and pulled out the notebook with the spiral. She handed it to me like a diploma. Inside were names and phone numbers and snippets of voices. At the back of the book, she had written a letter. She did not know I would read it with a hand over my mouth, like a woman watching a miracle step down from a bus. It said, "I used to think money was the way you measured a day. I was wrong. Today, I listened to a woman tell me about a pie recipe her mother wrote in pencil on a paper bag. I wrote it down. It felt like holding the world." That winter, Jason took a plea deal. Men like him do not do well under oath unless the oath is to profit. He wore a gray suit in a room with no microphones. He said the words "I knew" and "I misled" and "I agree." He did not say "I'm sorry." He will not have access to a bank account with someone else's name for 5 years. Dr. Bishop lost his license, then found God publicly. I hope God found him privately.
The banker retired and volunteers with us on Tuesdays, where he sits with men who cannot say the word ashamed and teaches them how to read a statement line by line. The clerk who gave me the pamphlet the day I tried to resuscitate myself in her office now sits at our table on Mondays. She brings cookies. She says, "I'm sorry" to strangers who did not ask for it, and means it in a way that makes people cry and then sit up straighter. The pastor comes to our grief group and talks less than he used to. He listens more. The reporter published a series called Paper Deaths. Schools used it in civics classes. My former students sent me photos of teenagers with their heads down, writing fast. 1 year after my funeral, we held a ceremony because humans need to speak to time. We did not do it in a church. We did it in the orchard, under the trellis that cast shade like a promise. We invited everyone who had ever been told by paper that they were gone. They came wearing the clothes of people who garden and the eyes of people who have found water in a place they didn't know was a well. We lit candles because light is how people talk when words are not enough. We passed a book and wrote names. We said them out loud. Saying a name is building a house.
Avery stepped up to the makeshift podium we made from a wine crate and spoke. Her voice no longer belonged to a person waiting for applause to tell her if she lived. "A year ago, I stood in front of a room and lied," she said. "I told people my mother was gone because it was easier than telling myself I was lost. She is here. I am here because she did not let me stay small. If you are like me, I have a broom and a chair and a day for you. We're hiring. We're listening. We're not tired yet." She did not cry. I did, a little. Maya did not because she was recording and needed her hands. After, we ate pie from recipes written on bags and napkins and handwriting that looked like a river. We watched a woman from the Pasco case dance with her grandson. We watched a man who had not said his wife's name in a year lean his head on my shoulder and say, "Thank you," to a person who helped him put his driver's license back in his wallet with the tenderness of returning a wedding ring. That night, I walked the vineyard alone. The stars were the same ones from the night before my husband died, before my daughter tried to convert me into a line item, before a room of people sang about heaven to an urn holding sand. The air smelt like cold earth and old promises. I put my hand on a wooden post that had held weight longer than I have carried mine and thought about what it takes to grow something that feeds. It takes cutting back. It takes weather you can't control. It takes human hands and time. I am not naive. There will be more Jasons. There will be more Averys who do not ask the question that would save them because they already decided they like the answer that pays. There will be more clerks who forget to look up and more banks that confuse speed with service. But there will also be more orchards. Because once you build a house that feels like truth, people will copy it. We are opening one in Spokane, another in Boise. A woman in Dallas sent more money with a note for the one we lost and the ones we found. When I am very old, which I plan to be, I will sit in a chair that looks at the rows and listen to people tell their names to other people who care. I will eat pie from a recipe written on a bag. I will hold my husband's letter in my lap the way a person holds a map, even after they know the route by heart. I will watch my daughter walk the path from the office to the garden and stop to pull a weed with her bare hands. I will watch Maya set up her microphones and hand them to someone who cannot believe anyone wants to hear their voice. I will watch the light move across the table like time forgiving itself. I did not get my funeral that day in the church. I got something else. I got to write an ending that does not end. I got to learn that sometimes the paperwork is wrong and the heart is right. I got to hear my name said out loud by a judge and a room full of people who believed a piece of paper and then believed what they could touch. I got to build a place where other people can walk in and say, I am alive, and watch the room nod and answer, we know. My name is Nora Caldwell. I am 69 years old now. If you need me, I will be in the orchard, making copies and coffee and calling people by the name they chose when they first found out what they were worth. If you come here with your hands empty, we will fill them with pens and forms and the kind of work that feels like being human. If you come here with a story about a room where they told you you were gone, we will walk you out into the light and make sure that room knows it is the one that's empty. And if someday, long from now, when my heart learns it is time to rest, someone stands in a room and says words about me, I hope they say this: she did not let paperwork decide what was true. She believed the sound a person makes when they say their own name. She taught her daughter to build tables. She planted vines, and people grew there. She loved a letter written by a man who left her the blueprint for a house made of days. Until then, if anyone tells you a woman like me is finished, remember the altar and the sand and the last pew. Remember the walk forward. Remember the way the floor can hold a person who refuses to disappear. Remember the way a name said out loud can carry a life back into the room where it belongs.